Hello and welcome to a lecture about reference data types in Java. In the previous video, we learned that primitive data types are storing values in their respective variables. On the other hand, reference data types will store just some addresses of memory where the actual values are stored. That would be the main difference between the two concepts. Not to confuse you, the actual place in memory where the two types of data types are stored is different. Primitives are stored on something called the stack, whereas reference data types are stored on the heap. A stack is a structure similar to a stack of Lego pieces. This makes primitives more easily accessible. However, there are situations where you would need to use reference data types instead. There are reference data types similar to the primitives. However, those are declared a bit differently. As you can see on the screen, I have created a representation of each primitive as reference data types. As you may observe, the most obvious difference between the two types is that reference data types will always start with a capital letter. This is because the reference data types are based on actual classes, on actual objects, and there is a convention in Java that all the class names should start with a capital letter. I will show you a simple trick in IntelliJ to see the actual class definition that sits behind those reference types. Press the Ctrl key on your keyboard and press left mouse click, and you will be directed to the respective class. As you can see, there are plenty of properties, functions that can be used for this respective reference data type. If you try to do the same for a primitive, nothing will happen since those are not actually based on classes. Another important difference between reference types and primitives is the space they occupy in memory. Int primitive, for example, holds 32 bits of data, whereas integer occupies 128 bits. This information is important if your goal is to optimize your code to make it more memory efficient. Until now, we saw the advantage of using primitives over references. But what about references? Are the references that bad? Well, the biggest advantage is that they are based on classes and you can call different functions that are defined in their classes in order to achieve different results. Let us assume that we want to transform our integer into a short. We can do this by calling the short value function directly for our integer reference. You can take a peek on what are the available functions for integer class by writing the respective object and press dot. This will retrieve the list of properties and functions defined in its class. By the way, those functions are actually called methods in Java, so we are going to refer to them from now on as methods. That's about it. Before closing the video, let's run the program to see if we get the same output as before. As you can see, the same values are displayed, meaning that those data types will show the exact output as their primitives counterparts. The thing to remember here is that the reference data types are powered by classes, and also they store references to memory addresses where the values are stored, not the values themselves as primitives do.